Hello, welcome back to Doing Bart Things. This is Bart, and today we've got a couple little stories. Um, just starting off with some Radeon rumors. So the RX 7600 is apparently the kind of the top priority for AMD right now. Um, could make an appearance at Computex. Um, I kind of hope, honestly, they just make an entire presentation about the mid-tier 7000 series. What rumor mill has is that there have been some tweaks since the 7900 series release. So the 7800, 7700, and 7600 are going to benefit from that. Now, um, we have, whoops, I am moving stuff around there, sorry. Uh, we have some alleged specs on the 7800 and 7700 XT, which I'll go over in just a second. But the 7600, I think, could be an interesting product. Um, a lot of it is going to depend, obviously, on price. Like, that's the big thing we're talking about here. What's it going to cost in comparison to its Nvidia counterparts? And I think the other thing to keep in mind is what's the VRAM going to look like? If it's a very inexpensive low end part, then 8 gigabytes might be acceptable. Um, but as you'll see in my next little things to pull up and talk about, 8 gigabytes is getting to be a little bit iffy. So I think it'll be interesting. The 7600 XT is probably going to be like the 40 series. Like if they do a 4050, for example, then that might be something. If this 7600 XT is able to in any way approach the 4060 or 4060 Ti, that could be massive for AMD. That could be a big coup because if they approach that kind of performance, we know that this thing is not going to cost as much, or at least it shouldn't. And if AMD is smart, they will, which if they come out with this card first, then it sounds like they're going to go for market share, which I think is smart to go for adoption in their circumstance, because that's been their big problem is when people go to buy video cards, a lot of times what they do is they only are hoping in a way for AMD to do well to bring down Nvidia card prices so they can buy the Nvidia card. And I think this is our opportunity to change that a little bit by getting market share. If they are producing a solid card, which it seems like by and large these cards they produce are fairly solid. It's been driver support and software support that people have over the course of AMD owning Radeon, or when they bought ATI and kind of coming forward to today. It's been the driver support and software support that's been sort of the Achilles quote unquote heel of this whole thing. It's been the underlying thing that has kept a lot of people from widely adopting Radeon cards. And in many cases, it's a little overblown. The software is a little bit better than maybe it's given credit for. But it's just, NVIDIA has a huge driver team. Obviously, they do a lot of work on the drivers. And NVIDIA's been having trouble with drivers too. Like, don't make no mistake. Know that NVIDIA has a number of driver faffs, but it's more seemingly common with AMD cards, and that's been the general consensus. And having said that, I think that AMD has come a long way though. I had a 5700 XT for a while, and I had no issues. I just had zero issues with it. So I think now in some of the things I'm seeing, their software has come around enough. I don't have an issue with putting that into a machine that someone will just use necessarily. that said, the topic at hand is if you want to get mass market adoption, the way to do it is making sure that those value products are really solid and that you offer them at the right price. Because make no mistake, they will sell in this market if they are priced appropriately. So if this competes with a 4060, but it is priced $100 less than a 4060 or more, it will sell, and it will probably outsell the 4060. The 4060, just going off of the rumored specs, I think is going to be a complete disaster and dead on arrival. That card, I'm not going to recommend that card to anybody that were to come to me and say, hey, I want to build a budget gaming rig. I'd be like, well, okay, if you're building a budget gaming rig, yeah, like that card is no bueno. I'll show one of the reasons why too in a minute with some other this other YouTube video from UFD Tech has a screenshot which I could probably find if I looked, maybe a better screenshot of it, but since he was talking about it, I thought I would bring it up. So anyway, so we'll have to see. On this 7600 XT, there's not a lot of specs yet, but I'm anticipating we'll get more at Computex for it. Like I said, I'm hoping we get more for the whole range. So speaking of the whole range, the 7800, 7700 XT, over to OC3.net, and this was on a Red Tech Gaming. So they've actually got leaked specs of the 7800 XTX, the 7800 XT, 7700 XT. So these are kind of like your bread and butter cards, right? These are the ones that are going to come in at that $300, $400, $500 price mark, one would hope. That would be sort of like your bread and butter cards, as it were. Now, what I find really interesting is they had a 7800 XTX that's probably been canned. And if you look at the specs, so it's an N31, which is the, I believe, is the same die as the 7900 XTX, 7900 XT, I believe. But it's just cut down a little bit more. It has 70 CUs, 16 gigs of RAM. Now, here's what I think, okay? It's just my opinion. This is a useless card. Or if they were to release it at any price that makes any kind of sense for them or for us, it's going to cannibalize the 7900 XT. The 7900 XT, this, I don't know why they would release something between the 7800 XT and the 7900 XT as the 7800 XTX. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It's basically it's just basically going to cannibalize the 7900 XTX. The answer here isn't to price this some weird medium land between the 7800 XT and the 7800 XTX. It's to lower the price on 7900 XT and then call it a day. Like that's that's what you do there. This is a weird product attempt by them. May mean that they have yields in an area where they're trying to figure out like how to market this, but I just think this is weird. It's not a great idea. Yeah, you know, if they come out with this one, yeah, it would totally cannibalize the 7900 XT, and the 7900 XT just needs to come down in price. It's already down to I thought I saw one on sale for $780, I think. Memory serves. I think you bring the 7900 XT down to $699, and I think it would be a decent value. But I think that's me in my head assuming that the 7800 XT is going to be about a $499 card. So, yeah, I think $499 or maybe even $599, depending on what it performs like. Again, this is a cut down but slightly better revision. So I think what that means is it's going to clock high. It's the same silicon, but I think it's going to. It's an N32, and I think this will actually clock better than the 7900 and 7900 XTX with less power. Because the rumor mill is that these cards are actually more on point with what AMD was aiming for. The 7900 series didn't quite make the mark. It's a good card, like the 7900 XTX on a custom cooler is a decent performer, but it's a much more, it's not the efficiency / performance win that AMD was really looking for over their previous gen versus what these cards are supposedly going to be. But I still don't think that's going to be a massive difference. And so I just think that, this card is close enough to a 7900 XT that that's probably why it's been canned, would be my guess. Especially when it roughly competes with 4070 Ti. I mean, that's what a 7900 XT does. 7900 XT, I believe, I'd have to go back and check benchmarks. I believe it pretty much beats the 4070 Ti in rasterization performance, just regular rendering. Obviously, it loses to a number of things in ray tracing, but it also costs around the same or less already. So I'm not sure. It's a weird position to put this card in. Anyway, so they probably canned it. It makes sense. The 7900 XT is just going to continue to probably drop in price a bit and fill in the gap on where this card would have been priced anyway to get, adoption over the 4070 series. Anyway, 7800 XT is again, something key here I want you guys to notice: 16 gigs of RAM, 16 gigs of RAM, 12 gigs of RAM. Like the lower end of the stack even has 12 gigs. Okay, so that's good. That's what we want to see. The memory moving up. The top of the line 7900 XTX has 24 gigs, 7900 has 20 gigs, 7800 has 16 gigs. This is as much as a 4080, by the way, the amount of memory, which should give you an idea of how far behind Nvidia is and what they're charging just to get a card that has a decent VRAM on it. 7700 has 12 gigs, and I kind of think like these two cards should be really good cards. Don't know how this is going to work out, but it's looking pretty decent, at least from what Nvidia is releasing. So something to keep an eye on. Like, I really hope that they talk more about these. We see some benchmarks and stuff maybe in Computex. That would be good. But just kind of keep an eye on these frame buffer here and take into consideration what I'm about to show you. Okay. So UFD Tech, in this article, they were talking about various subjects. One came up of 3070 getting, this guy modded his 3070. Now, about modding and soldering and stuff, that takes a willingness to understand that you may break your part. Okay? This, you're physically altering the board, so you are unsoldering memory chips and soldering more memory chips on. That's a very bold thing to do to a video card. So what this person did is they actually modded it. They put 16 gigabytes of VRAM on their 3070. Okay, 3070 comes with 8. They took those chips off and they put 16 gigs on there. Okay, and what happened was certain titles, specifically like take Resident Evil 4. So notice the 72 frames per second over here and 76 frames per second over here. That's not really the important part on what it's running. Look at the minimums though. So you have minimum, blah, blah, blah. The 1% lows, 7 frames per second. 7 frames per second. So we're getting some serious jitters here by that. But when you upgrade the memory, it's like 60, 59, something. Like, that is a massive improvement in gameplay. Now, as I understand it, this actually is not a great console port. So when they took it from console to PC, it was not done super well, supposedly, which I get. But here's the thing. I don't think it's completely their fault. Development takes time and money. And why do consoles, which cost, I mean, half a third of what a comparable full-bore gaming PC might cost. People are spending a lot of money on their gaming PC. Why is it these high-performance video cards are coming with so little VRAM that in order to get their game to run right, somebody literally mods their 3070 to prove that the 3070 itself is not the problem, it's the amount of VRAM that was put on the card. Like, I just don't get it. It's dumb, and Nvidia should be taken to task over that part. Now, does that mean that the developer should get completely off the hook for not optimizing their port? Absolutely not. Like, they should do that, for sure. However, I think we want to take developers to task for so many things, and the fact of the matter is, development takes time and money and effort. Using a bigger freaking memory chip on a video card is not that hard. I mean, let's go back and look at AMD's lineup. This is going to be competing. This 7800 XT is going to be competing against the 4060 Ti, which has 12 gigs. Right? It's got 16. I mean, it's probably going to be cheaper. The 4060 has 8 gigs. This has 12. Like, we're getting to a point where this memory buffer, it means something. It really does. It doesn't mean anything until you fill it up, and then it means a lot because you're having to write elsewhere, and that's when it becomes a problem. And like, here's the example of what happens when you run into that limitation. So, yeah, it's just, I don't get it, man. You know, if I pay, so what I guess I'm getting at is Nvidia came out with a $600 video card. They tried to charge $600 for it. A lot of people were too smart for that. That has 8 gigs of VRAM. When we're seeing console ports come over and get crap 1% lows on their last generation that only had 8 gigs of RAM, and we can see that it's not because like, this proves that yes, maybe they should have optimized their port a little bit more, but this proves that if the video card just had more memory on it, it would be fine. It would be completely fine. Even with the same card, just more VRAM. This is pretty crazy to me. Because, you know, somebody paid $400, $500 for 3070. I'm not sure. And memory's just, it's expensive, but guys, it's not that expensive, okay? Like, it's really not. AMD took a sensible choice. Instead of getting the GDDR6X, they got the 6, and they put big caches on these cards, just to try and you know, make sure that their bandwidth and everything is up, or help with that. Like this has got 64 megabytes of whatever you call it in connect cache. Anyway, actually, it may not be the same thing, but anyway, they maybe they keep their bus high and they do some other wizardry to allow themselves to use a little bit slightly cheaper memory. Instead of the 6X, it's just the 6. But I guarantee you, I would rather have the slightly slower memory and have enough to run it so I don't get crazy 1% lows that makes my game all jittery than not, right? So, just something to think about. Like, and you can see here, like, it's 3716 VRAM versus 8 VRAM. It's the same card, but he just got some more memory on it. So, I think we can sit here and say it's a crappy port, but I think that's where we're headed, because these companies do not want to invest millions of dollars in development time to make the leap from console to PC because of a certain bottleneck in video performance. Like, it doesn't make any sense when people are buying an individual video card that costs more than the entire console that the game's getting ported from, that was developed for, and is much stronger in performance, but it's limited by this stupid cheapening out by video card manufacturer. So I get what UFD Tech is saying when he said, well, it's a crappy port, like they should have optimized it and all that. Well, sure, yeah, I'll grant. But I mean, what's easier? Like Nvidia, AMD's able to pull this off, and AMD's not making nearly as much money on their video cards as Nvidia is. So why? It just, I don't know. Like it really irritates me, because what's happening is this person may be forced to upgrade. Like, let's say you don't have the ability to solder more memory onto your video card, okay? You're going to be tempted to upgrade hardware, not because your hardware is obsolete, but well, it is obsolete, but it's being made obsolete artificially, right? It's being made obsolete artificially. This is not a limitation of what Nvidia can put on the card, obviously. If a dude can go in his garage with a soldering iron and do it himself. And I'm willing to bet that memory did not cost that much individually, as just the little memory chips themselves. I mean, it just, I don't know. It's like I said, this is very disappointing and irritating to me, because we pay so much for our hardware, and we do so because, okay, we're going to build this really fast machine that's going to last us a while, and then you got companies going, well, we're just going to plan obsolescence here. We're going to make this to where we're going to put 8 gigs in this. Game developers are going to start saturating that, and then if somebody wants to get a video card that has 16 gigs, I mean, from Nvidia, you still can't get a card that has 16 gigs unless you jump all the way up to the 4080, which is $1,200 to get a 16 gig video card. AMD is going to give you one. Well, honestly, you can buy one right now for $600. Like right today, you can go and get yourself a 6950 XT, which is kind of what my suggestion has been. Because again, I think this is just going to become more and more and more of an issue over time as people increase the fidelity and the environments, the size of the environments that people are playing in their games with more engines. It's just going to be more and more of a thing. And I don't think any sort of DLSS is going to save us from this ultimately. And this is just Nvidia is cheaping out, making a little few extra bucks on the front end, and making you purchase a video card sooner than you otherwise would, because they think it doesn't matter, you're a fanboy, you're going to buy Nvidia anyway. That's just my opinion. And I think this kind of stuff's going to bite them as people start to wake up a little bit to it. And then they'll start putting more RAM on their video cards, but they'll put just enough to kind of get over the hump, and then go back. And it just, I don't know. Here's hoping AMD and Intel really got their stuff together. AMD, I'm okay with you taking a bit longer on these products. Make sure that they are right. Make sure that they are good. Make sure the software is good. Make sure that everything is 100% on day one when you release them, and that they get reviewed. Make that great first impression, and I think that you guys will absolutely take market share because of nonsense like this. So, anyway, make sure they're priced right too. Let's see. Yep, so I think that's about it. I think I'll end my rant there. But if you guys would be so kind, like and subscribe. I really do appreciate it. I've had very few people actually watching stuff, but when you do, on occasion I get a comment. I've so far been able to respond to every comment. But if you agree, disagree, whatever you have, you want me to hear it, then by all means post. And I hope everybody's having a great day, maybe a fantastic rest of your week. Take it easy, and we'll be seeing you.